and welcome back my partners in crime. Welcome back to Murder Analysed for another true crime. Now today's crime is an unsolved crime. It's a very sad case this actually, to tell you the truth. When I was researching this case, it's a shocking case. Now this is Emily Salvini, and she was born on the 31st of October 1989 and she died on the 3rd of May 1997. She was just 7 years old at the time of her murder, and her murder was by arson. Now this is a very strange case. Now this is a deliberate, premeditated crime. This is quite obvious by the facts of this case that this family was targeted by an arson attack, probably of more than one person, and you can see this as we go through the facts of this case. So we're talking about 1997, and of course in these sort of times there wasn't so much CCTV about, there wasn't door cams or car cams or anything that could have picked up this sort of crime, right, or the perpetrators of this sort of crime. So let's look at the background of this case, of this family, this targeted family really, and then we shall have a look at sort of arson itself and who sort of commits these sort of crimes of arson, the sort of types of, you know, there's 3 different types of sort of when we look at arson and stuff. And so what was the motive here for this attack on this family? So look, Emily was born in Italy. Her mother was Katie and her father was Marco. Katie was the mother, and she graduated from university with a degree in politics and met Marco on holiday actually in Italy in the 1980s. They were married for about a year before Emily was born, and they lived then in Lake Granada and for 3 years before moving back to Caversham in Reading. Now Reading is in Berkshire, and I think Katie's family come from there, so they moved back with the children. They also had then, Emily had a little brother and his name was Zach, and he was about 4 years younger than her at the time of the attack on this home. Now Katie and Marco had separated, and Katie was left then with the 2 children and was at that time the only occupant of that, excuse my phone, the only occupant of the home at the time of this arson attack. Now Marco, he used to have the children every Saturday, used to pick them up at 10 o'clock. So whoever done this crime knew that, one, Katie wouldn't be on this house on her own. They knew that these 2 children would also be in this home on this day. Now we're all going to say, you know, and people do the minute they hear about where you have an arson attack and you have a single parent and the, you know, divorce. It was an amicable divorce. Everything was all right. Marco had nothing to do with this crime at all. Actually, it looks like it was for other reasons, and probably the main person that these people tried to attack and was Katie, the mother. And I think there was some sort of argument or something going on, and it looks like it was attacked due to that. So Marco, the father, had nothing to do with this. He was really, you know, took out this investigation at a very early stage. But as I say, the main point of this is that these children, whoever done this crime, knew that these children were going to be present on that night of this arson attack. They knew that. And I'm telling you, we know it was premeditated, and we know there was more than one because of what these circumstances in this case and how we can find out them sort of things, what's come to the knowledge of police over this time. Now this property was a rented property, and it was in Caversham. I think it was in Hemdean Road in Caversham, and as I said, it was rented, and Katie worked part-time at a local pub, and Marco, as I said, was regular contact with his children, and really every Saturday he visited these children. So he is out of the equation totally. So now let's look at the facts of this case, because this is how we know that this is a premeditated arson attack, probably with the motive really for murder being revenge, right? We know that, and I'm telling you, whoever done this attack made sure that help wasn't coming anytime soon to these people, because at 1:30 a.m. on the 3rd of May 1997 telephone wires in that road, in this Hemdean Road, were severed, and now this caused this loss of telephone connections to around 30 homes within this area. So whoever done this didn't want the fire brigade being called, didn't want the police being called, didn't want anyone rushing to put this fire out. Now that tells you this is well planned, well thought about and premeditated. Now at the same time as these wires were cut and these phone lines were down, petrol was being poured through Katie Salvini's home in that road. So now we know there must be 2 or more people involved in this crime. Really shocking. And we know now that they wanted to kill not only Katie but her whole family, and they nearly succeeded. Now at the time we had Emily sleeping in one room, and we had Katie and Zach, the young lad, the 4-year-old, sleeping in the, I think he was 4 or 3-year-old. He was sleeping with his mum in that bed. Now he woke up. He's the one that woke up and set off the alarm, really, to the mother. The mother then said that she could see the heat and the smoke coming in. Now after pulling Zach out of the window, and you'll see a picture from where she dropped him onto like a bay window ledge outside of the front of the house. And then she was trying to get into Emily's room, which is more at the back. She couldn't do it. So she ended up really falling then from that window. People did try, you had neighbours and stuff trying to get this child out of this house. But unfortunately she died on that evening of smoke inhalation. It's just shocking, isn't it, really, when you think about it. So we now have what we now know is an arson attack, which was deadly, as many arson attacks are. Now arson, when we talk about arson, the 3 main types of arson, and we've got a few cases coming up here on arson actually. We have arson that is for the motive of revenge, and I think this is what this case was about, and the police believe that as well, because of this sort of silly argument or something which was happening with a group of people, and they believe this is why Katie in this house was targeted. But when we talk about arsonists, you know, generally, right, and the research was done, and there isn't that much research that can be done on arsonists because of, really, they're very rarely caught. For the simple reason is that the evidence, especially the older crimes where there wasn't the CCTV and everything else, yes, we know that petrol was put through the door, but you don't know who's done it, right? There's nothing, no evidence left there. Whatever evidence was in the inside of that property, the accelerant, yes, we know it was accelerant. That's all we know in this case, and the police have not been able to find anything else about this case. But when we talk about arsonists, usually a single arsonist will usually have quite a low IQ, actually, probably between about 70 and 90. That's their sort of, in a general term, we're looking at. Now we have people that, like this case, that people do arson for revenge. Really, I think it's quite a cowardly way, isn't it, really? But that's how they do it. We may have then people that suffer from mental health and other issues and stuff that use fire like this, or we may have what's called the hero syndrome of people setting fires because they want to be the hero, and that's a case that's coming up shortly about that. So we have different types of arsonists. Now usually arsonists work alone, to tell you the truth, but not all. Not all. So I have highlighted an example of a case and of a group of people, and it was led by this Mr. Mohammed, and this was a revenge attack, and in this attack, and I think this was in 2002 in this country, he killed 8 people in the same family by arson, this group of people. He was arrested but then bailed on that, and he went off to Pakistan, and he was brought back then It took years actually to bring him back. So in 2019 he was sentenced to about 23 years. In 2017 I think they got him back. 2019 his sentence was up because it was seen to be too lenient, and that was by the Court of Appeal, up to his sentence to 27 years. So people do this thing, and sometimes it's easier when you have multiple people that's done a crime to catch them, because people do talk, right? Where single arsonists are usually more difficult to find, because really, and it can, as I said, be for any of them three reasons. This case was definitely, when you look at it, was a revenge, but it was also very well planned, premeditated, and really I think the aim here was to kill all of them in this property, because really they could have waited if it was just going for Katie, time when these children wasn't going to be in this property. You're talking about 1:30 a.m. in the morning that phone lines have been cut and petrol poured through a door. You would probably also then have a lookout on something else. So you're probably, I think you'd be looking in this case at about no less than 3 people involved in this crime, which then gives you the opportunity, I think, when you're researching and you're trying to get information on these, is that you have to rely then on whether loyalties are going to change and someone is going to speak, right? So there are opportunities here to find out really the perpetrators of this crime. The police have said, and I agree with them, that Katie would undoubtedly would have known one of them perpetrators of this crime. She may have seen them or been associated with them in some way, maybe just by friend or by an acquaintance of someone. Lots of people, I can tell you, have been interviewed in this case, but at the moment, because there is no evidence and no one's coming forward with anything they know, that this 7-year-old child's murder has still not been solved. So this is why we do these sort of crimes, when we talk about these sort of arsonists and people like this that do these sort of crimes, is that they need to be stopped. Because I don't think the argument that Katie was involved in was that serious. But people have different motives. Some people like revenge because they want to take back something. They want to make you pay for something, which can be really to them quite serious, but to you it may be nothing. So all I can say, if you know anything about this case, or you've heard anything on the grapevine about this case, or you may suspect someone of doing this, then you should report what you know to the police, because a 7-year-old child lost her life here. Now, this people, we don't know if they've done anything else. Probably not, it seems, on the face of it. But with arson, you see, you'd never know. But to take the law into your own hands like that, because of a silly argument that you disagreed with someone over something, and to take the lives, or to try to take the lives of 3 people, to burn a property down, is not right, is it? Now these people know, and this is probably why they've kept very quiet about what they've done, that the sentencing for arson is extremely high. It's extremely high, because these are dangerous individuals that need to be stopped. I cannot believe that this case, since 1997, no one of this group of people, and we know it was a group of people, have not broke their silence. But I think this is more fear, because if they had anything to do with this crime, they would be looking at serious time here. Because now, not only have you done the arson, damaged property, everything else, you're actually up on a murder charge. And I think they know that. But as I say, loyalties change. People change over the years. I mean, whoever done this should be ashamed of themselves. Absolute cowards. They must be. Now listen, when we talk about arsonists, we're looking really, I would say, in this group, at a group of people. Probably could be a woman involved, I think. But I think the main perpetrator here would have been a man, probably the age It could be anything from 17 to 29 years old, right? The actual arsonist himself. Probably that's what it is. The person that cut the telephone wires, you know, is probably the person what planned this. Because as I said, arsonists are not usually the most intelligent people. They usually come from troubled backgrounds and stuff like this as well. They're usually quite loners and stuff. But this was a group arson attack. A group arson attack on an absolutely innocent family who didn't deserve this. And this child certainly didn't deserve to die at the hands of these people. So again, I encourage anybody that knows anything, whether you think your information is relevant in this case or not, to come forward with information and try and get this case solved and get some justice for Emily, a 7-year-old child that was murdered by arson at the hands of absolute cowards. Now, Zach, this little child, also was sent, I think, to Berkshire hospital, but also then he had to be transferred, and he spent about 3 weeks in hospital. That was one because of the burns that he suffered, and also because of the smoke insulation. And Katie, I think, spent a month in hospital, also had to be transferred to a specialist burns unit for the injuries that she suffered. Then we have Emily's funeral that took place in Caversham on Thursday, 19th of June 1997. Now, I would say, if I was the police officers, to go through, I mean, they probably were there, right? Listen, arsonists, whether it's a whole group of them or the one of them that did the arson attack itself, likes to see their work, right? They don't like to face the victim. They're gutless, right? They're gutless people. But they do like to stand back and take a look at the work that they've done. They do. And if this is a real arsonist who really believes, you know, he loves fire and he loves all this, you know, and, you know, I know we have this, you know, the pyromaniacs and all this sort of stuff. Listen, these pyros, they're not really. It's a very limited number of people that are actually fascinated with fire, that actually start fires, about 6%, really. Most fires are usually started by this sort of thing as a revenge attack, or someone, this hero syndrome, as they call it. And hero syndrome is usually much younger. Arson attacks can sort of be at any age, I think, but really we are limiting this on the sort of facts of this case, on the age of Katie and different things like this, that the person probably wasn't older, I don't think, than 29, because most people over that age would have more sense, right? But as I said, and it always comes back to, when we look at the statistics and we look at the work and all the theories around what arsonists are, it always comes out that arsonists are usually have very low IQs, very low IQs. As I said, the person though that has took down the phone lines, the person that's planned this, and then we may have had some lookouts as well, right? They may not be such low IQ as the person that's done the arson attack themselves. But any of these people, or all of these people, would have liked to have seen their work, because we're talking about revenge. That's what you want, isn't it? You see, they may not have killed Katie, but they did kill her child. That would have left great pain and suffering for this woman, wouldn't it? That was what they would have been after in a revenge attack. If they hadn't have killed her, that's the next best thing, isn't it? That revenge. You know, that feeling of, look what I've done, look at the pain and suffering that you're going through because I've created that, I've caused that. This is the sort of people you're looking at when we have arson attacks that are done on revenge. You're looking for people that want to see what they've done, live what they've done. They want to see you suffer. So I would say that they was probably at this funeral or close by or watching this funeral. They would be. They would be. And they all would also probably, and I think the police, and I've said this before with the police, that they do believe that Katie would have known or been associated in some way with the perpetrators of this crime, without a doubt. And this is where the focus of the police investigation has been, where they have focused and interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people in this. Lots of people have been arrested, but of course there is no evidence. So we need someone to come and speak talk up, you know, have a bit of, you know, backbone in you. Have a little bit of, you know, empathy. Empathy is the word here. So if you know anything, you must say it. I always say this, because or else this crime will not be solved. And if you are left, whether this is an incident, an isolated incident, we still have an arsonist here that has done this and murdered someone with the potential to do this sort of crime again. It could be you next time that's pissed him off. Really. And maybe that may be the reason why people are not coming forward when you think about it. Are they scared? Are they scared? All I would say was this person, the actual person that put the petrol through the door, is the arsonist. And he needs to be stopped. And I'm saying it's a him because I believe it is. But I do believe that a woman was probably involved in this. I do. Maybe the lookout, maybe the planner. But we are looking here for people that have gone out of their way to take the knives by arson, cut phone lines to make sure that no help can be called quickly enough. No one can ring the police and say someone's hanging around with a petrol can. You see where this is going? These people, this was a premeditated, planned attack on these people, on this household. And they, tell you the truth, didn't give a shit who was in that house. They just wanted to do what they set out to do, and they didn't care about the consequences. So the consequences for people like that, if they are caught, is probably a life in prison, because that's the only thing that they deserve. So shortly after this incident happened, the police did set up a mobile unit in this road, right? They interviewed all the people around, you know, the neighbours. They searched the gardens because they're looking for the flammable, you know, fluid. They're looking for a can or somewhere that this liquid could have been stored in and used, but they didn't find anything. Now, you know, so these people, not only they've understood that they can't leave anything behind. So this person that put that petrol through the door knew and thought about what he was doing, right? He did. He put the petrol through the door. He must have put the can away from that door, because you couldn't even, you know, the drips and everything, or whatever he used to put that stuff through that door. He's moved away from the door before he's lit the match and put that in the front door, in the letterbox, so then the fire would go upstairs. Now you're taking a great risk, you know, when you're setting fires and you're using flammable liquids. You know, you're going to spill it, you're going to try it. A letterbox is this big. So we do know that a lot of petrol cans, or most petrol cans, have the funnel, don't they, that would stop. But you're always going to have overspill. So whatever they've done, they've thought about this. They didn't want to harm themselves in any way. So this takes a little bit of time, right? It takes a little bit of time, because the minute you light that match and you throw that match in, now it's on, right? It's on. And so this is where this premeditation, thinking about it, comes into it. This arsonist has probably done something, I believe, before, right? Probably on a smaller scale. He would have done something before. He understood how to light that fire, not harm himself in any way, and leave that property without the overspill and the can being lit. Because if the can had set alight, he could not have took that can away. So we're talking about someone with experience here of using this sort of flammable substances, or has used it or practiced before he's actually done this crime. So there was, I think, 2 men were arrested and held for questioning over that weekend straight away. They were later released without charge. Now, Katie had also reported to the police that her telephone cable had been cut about 2 weeks previously to that, right? So that didn't work, and the 2 men also had been questioned over that and released. But this time they didn't just cut Katie's phone line, they cut all the phone lines this time in this area. About 30 homes were affected. So again, probably the crime would have took place about 2 weeks prior. But because they were caught out or something went wrong, it happened then on that night. But this time they took out all the phone lines, So we definitely know this was a planned attack. So you had this police then appealing for two men to come forward. A neighbour saw them walking down this Hemdean Road, and then they run back to a blue car at the time of the attack. Both men were described as Asian, one being in his 20s and the other in his 40s, and police were keen to speak to them both, right? To see if they had seen anything, or if, you know, they had seen the arson attack going, not saying it's them, but had they seen anything. So a man was arrested on the 17th of June, held overnight and released again without charge. Now listen, the police in 1997, in July 1997, did release a very unusual artist impression of a man without a face. Listen, it's grasping at straws, isn't it? Right? When we are trying to find people, you don't want to start releasing out photographs of people without faces. You don't, because we need to put a face to it. So, you know, but I don't know, the description of these two men, these two witnesses were given out, but you know, and I haven't even put it up as a thing, because it's just ridiculous to say that you're after and you're putting a description out of a person but a faceless person. Listen, if anyone saw anything in that street, no matter how strange it was, you should come forward. And if you are these two Asian lads that at that time were in this street, no matter what you was doing, a bit of drug dealing, whatever you was doing, and you weren't the arsonist, then you need to come forward, right? And tell what you know. They're not after you for anything else. Where any of you is trying to burgle somewhere, whatever you was trying to do, that's not what they're after. They're after the information that you may know about what happened in the street on that night, right? That's what they know. They want to know. I believe there was more than two anyway involved in this crime, without a doubt. You've got one cutting wires, one putting petrol through. You had to have a lookout. There must be the minimum of three here. You know, there must be, to get away with this for so long. Another witness said that they saw about 4:40 a.m. This was just shortly before this fire and everything was done. I think, don't forget, the phone lines were cut off at 1:30 a.m. This fire was then started around 4 sort of a.m. so quite in the dark, dead of night, really shortly before the fire. So really he was described as being about 5 foot 8 inches tall, or 1.73 meters, and 5 foot 11 inches between that. So between 5 foot 8 and 5 foot 11, right? Short dark hair, was wearing a padded light lumberjacket style shirt or jacket with this checked pattern all over it. Now this was July, so 4 a.m. in the morning, you haven't got long until it gets light. So, you know, a lot of things are done. You know, is it when I don't know if the moon was up that night, how bright it would have been, I'm not really sure. But if you're talking about, you know, that sort of time, 4 a.m, it's a good time. So someone even understood the sort of time of when things were, you know, sort of at its darkest point in July time. So in August, police cleared this overgrown area and junction of this Hemdean Road and Victoria Road, where this man without a face, right, had been seen standing. For the second time, the area had been searched and nothing interesting was found. Police searched drains, the Thames, for discarded items. So here we go with the legal proceedings on the 6th of August 1997. Police arrested a 33-year-old male and his common law wife in their home in Caversham Road. Forensic tests were carried out on the man's vehicle and the couple's home was searched. The man had previously had been interviewed by detectives, was arrested on suspicion of murder, and his partner was arrested on suspicion of aiding and abetting. Both were released again without charge. In October 1998, Thames Valley Police stated that a male remained the suspect in this murder and would remain so for the foreseeable future. But as I've said again, when we have arson, it's not so easy to prove, is it? So, an inquest to the death, to little Emily's death, was on the 4th of November 1997 and gave a verdict of unlawful killing. In April 1999, almost 2 years after the attack, Katie made a plea for help to find her daughter's killer, and the police stated that they believed someone was shielding him or her. Right? So, I don't know, when we talk about people shielding known criminals like this, and this isn't just an everyday case, someone's robbed someone, someone's beaten up. This is a child, and I keep saying it, a 7-year-old child. Emily was a child of her whole life ahead of her, taken away by cowards, taken away by people that wanted revenge. Well, they got their revenge. So if you are shielding these people, and I say they, and I've said it right from the beginning, them, if you are shielding them, then you need to stop, really, and think about your actions. Because probably by this stage now, you may have children yourself. You may have grandchildren yourself. Think of them. Think of, you have allowed people like this to be free on our streets. That's what you've done. To get away with murder. That's what you've done. I think you're just as bad if you are doing that as the people that committed this crime of arson and murder. You're just as bad, if not worse, really. Because you aren't going to face years in prison. Well, you will if you've perverted the course of justice in any way. Absolutely. But if you haven't come forward because you are scared, or you haven't come forward because of your loyalties to some people, then maybe it's time for you to rethink your loyalties in your life and do the right thing and come forward. Listen, there's no other way that this case is going to be solved. And for the people, really, that done this awful crime, how despicable are you? How do you live with yourself? How do you sleep at night? Really? In the end, you know, people always pay for what they've done in one way or another. It's called karma. So if the law don't get you, something else will. So anyway, this has been the very, very sad case of this arson murder of little Emily, a 7-year-old innocent child, murdered at the hands of people with absolutely no remorse for what they've done, no respect for human life or a child's life. Such a sad case. So until the next time, bye bye.